guys, welcome back to the Run a Retreat podcast. We're in our new offices here in Loughborough and we're here with my co-host Lewis Moses. It's the first one we've done in around about, it's like 3 months now, isn't it? It's been quite a while.
It could be, yeah. We've had a lot going on. We've moved into new offices. We're calling this Run a Retreats HQ, headquarters going on. We've got a new member of staff, which is great.
Yeah, welcome Holly.
Welcome to Holly. Holly, you may see Holly on the podcast as well, because she's got us mixing it up. And to be fair, if we're being fair here, Holly's given us a bit of a kick up the backside. But also, I'm going to give a quick mention to Denise, because Denise keeps saying to us, you need to do another episode. Matt and Lewis, you need to do another episode. So Denise, we are back. We had a little bit of break, and quite appropriately, this episode is about rest and recovery, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah, well actually, my mum, hi mum, my favourite listener, she says to get back going again as well. So today, obviously it's welcome to Holly, but we're also going to talk about our upcoming retreats. We're also going to talk about marathon, cycle and all that side of things. We're going to talk about rest and recovery as well. So a few different topics to go through today. First of all, we're going to go into our upcoming retreat. So we've got one in London coming up in July the
10th marathon workshop, which
so first one we've done in London. We've done the rest of the workshops. First workshop was in Loughborough back in January, was it?
Yeah.
So this is the first time we've been down south, which is kind of where run through bases and stuff as well. So some of the run through runners have already signed up for this, which is exciting to see them at this. It's a 1 day workshop. It's £95, and throughout the day you'll be listening to a variety of talks, Lewis going through lots of details. All the information's on the website for that particular workshop, and then we go to Morzine. So this is a long away Morzine retreat.
From London to Morzine.
London to Morzine. Could be song in that somehow. And yeah, so we've been wanting to do that for the last few years, and then COVID stopped us back in 2020. So we're finally able to go ahead with that one there, and then we jump from there to Loughborough for our performance retreat, which is in
Bank Holiday weekend is August.
Bank Holiday August
26th to 29th, I believe.
Which is the same thing we did last summer, with a slightly different twist. And then we've got in October the Lake District, so we're going to a different location this time, aren't we?
Yeah, different. I was actually up there this weekend, very close by. It's in the Borrowdale area. But yes, we're going to a hotel called the Glaramara, which is lovely. They hold a lot of retreats and events for some of the big corporate companies out there, and we were recommended this place by somebody else. Went to check it out. We thought it was perfect for what we want to achieve up there. And we thought, yeah, why not try somewhere new? We loved the lakes last year. It's a bit of a trek to get up there, but it's so cool. And we were fortunate with the weather last year. But even if you don't get the weather, as long as you're prepared and you know what to come, you'll have a great time. So yeah, that's our 3 retreats and a workshop we've got planned in 2022, isn't it?
Exciting, yeah. And then Holly coming on board, hopefully more to come in 2023, but we'll keep you guys updated on those. So we're going to talk first of all about the marathon cycle. So there has been quite a few marathons happen over the last few months since we last did our last podcast. Obviously Manchester happened in April, wasn't it? And Brighton Marathon happened then as well. So 2 large city marathons, and Edinburgh was just this weekend gone by. Well done to Lucy, Run a Retreat team member who completed the marathon this time round. So yeah, just a bit of information from you, Lewis, in terms of the marathon cycle and how that works. Obviously we've got the ones in the spring period, April to May, and then we've got the ones in September to October time. Just a bit of insight into how you think people should think about those in terms of training cycles, when they should be ramping up their training, and also when they should be entering those events.
Yeah, so the marathon cycle's just gone. It tends to kick off around end of March time, early April, as you mentioned. Manchester was a big one this year. That had our trials for Commonwealth and Europeans as well, for the elites, which was really good to see, but you had big mass participation events. Yeah, big well done to Lucy. First off, I'm going to mention Lucy because I popped her a text yesterday. She was a little bit disappointed with the time, and I said to her, what I can't believe with Lucy is she's ran a marathon literally 2 weeks out from her wedding day, which is incredible. To be planning a wedding, I stopped competing about 2 weeks out from my wedding because I just found it too much. But to run a marathon and to complete all that training and move house and relocate, all within a marathon training cycle is incredible. So big well done to Lucy. Gemma also ran Manchester Marathon, so we had teams out in Manchester. So did Holly, ran Manchester. So our team have been active in this marathon season. But the question now Matt's asking me is, well, what happens now? You go from this marathon cycle into another one. and that generally kicks off around September time. Berlin is usually one of the first ones, the big major ones. We have London in October, which again is unusual, but it's the last time it will be in October. And then all the way through to Gemma's actually entered in Valencia on December the 3rd. So what people tend to look at is, well, if I'm peaking for a marathon in the early spring, how do then I peak in the marathon again later on in the autumn?
But also, if you, like Lucy mentioned, disappointed with the marathon, and you think I'm fit and healthy, do you then go run another marathon a few months later? Do you try and find one in a different location? No, it's happened with Gemma, didn't it, in April time? So Gemma competing at a high level, finished the marathon, wasn't what she thought she was going to do on that day for a variety of reasons. She was then thinking, I'll enter one in a few weeks' time. Like, is that the right thing to do from a coach's perspective?
It can be. It depends, I guess, on a couple of factors. I think the most important thing to highlight is that's the beauty and the beast of the marathon. You almost do only get one crack at it within a training cycle. It's very hard to rest, recover, which we'll talk about in a while, and then go back and repeat, like say a 5k. You could go out the following week and have another crack at a 5k.
Why is that? Why is the marathon different?
Just the time on feet, the energy expenditure. You've tapered down as well, so you've tapered for that particular time. As you know, entering another event is not easy. They're not as common. Some people are quite fortunate in the sense they've almost not fortunate, but they've had events that are backlogged. So for example, last year I had an athlete, didn't perform well in Manchester, and he literally had a week apart from Manchester to Paris, and he was under the weather in Manchester. He had Paris there, so he decided, I'm going to have a run out in Paris. Ran like a 12-minute PB in Paris, a week after Manchester. But the biggest thing I'd say there is he actually stopped running at 15, 16 miles in Manchester and kind of ran home. So he didn't really run the marathon as such, and I think that's a big thing to consider. But the other big difference for me is, like you say, having it as, well, where can you go again?
Yeah.
It's difficult.
But like physiologically, is your body able to do that? Because if it is, and you're not trying to compete at a top level, and you're just trying to do more marathons or keep yourself fit and healthy and have another goal, is it okay to jump in and do a marathon a month later?
Yeah, I think so. Like, you look at ultra runners, they'll use marathons as part of their training cycle. They'll enter a marathon and they'll maybe have like a 50 miler as you've done an ultra. So that's part of a training cycle. I think the big question is, and I don't mean this to sound disrespectful to people, it's how much you put into that one event. If Paula Radcliffe used to say she had a month off after a marathon because she was that ruined from it.
It was everything for
everything in that one event. Whereas some people are more of, this event is part of a process and part of a journey, and that's important to some people as well. So I guess it's how much you put in, how much it's damaged you, how long do you need to recover, and can the body and the mind go again? Because as you know, that's a big factor, isn't it?
Do you think it's better to, I know it's not better, but if you aren't aiming for the top level, to make it more of a process to do a marathon as part of like your life, like doing one a month, or is it better to focus on a big one 2 or 3 times a year and do small races in between to fill the gaps in? Which method would you?
I think it depends on what you're looking for out of the sport. I think some people want to just target one race and that's their ultimate goal, particularly those who are looking for a time goal. But with anyone, whether you're going for a time goal on one event or whether you're looking to run multiple marathons, people do charity challenges and all sorts of things, I say to people all the time, in fact I text this to Lucy, is for me it's all about enjoying the journey as much as the outcome.
Yeah.
If you can't enjoy the process of building up and you can't see the benefits of that, then the outcome is just irrelevant.
Yeah.
Because a lot of elite sports people, what we found over the years is they've suffered with mental health problems post-sport and post-elite sport because they've not enjoyed the process. So then when the outcome is taken away from them, all of a sudden there's nothing in their life to be fulfilled by, and they've really struggled with it. So at any level, I think it's really important to enjoy the process that you do. Enjoy your training, enjoy who you surround yourself with, enjoy the events. Yes, they don't always go according to plan, do they? We know that. Some days you have a great run, but things go wrong, and that's absolutely fine. But don't be defined by one performance, not when you're going to continue to do things over time.
Yeah, I was actually watching a YouTube video this morning, the James Clear book, Atomic Habits.
Yes,
and I know we talked about it in previous podcasts, but that is part of learning the process, and part of that is picking one habit to do every day for 2 minutes, and then stack other habits on top of that stuff. And if you get to the point where you can eventually do running every day, or if one of your habits is every weekend you get up and you do a long run, or you go to a running event, or you go meet your friends for a long run in the hills or something, like that's a habit you pick up every single month.
Yeah.
So that is enjoying the process.
Speaking of habits, before you move on, are you still doing your stretching?
Yeah, every day.
How long?
It's been, well, since we started this podcast, wasn't it? 2 years.
Amazing.
2
Because
years.
we did a podcast right at the start on habits.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And every morning I get up, I use the same outfit. I've travelled a few different time zones during it, so I've actually lost the streak of it on my thing.
Oh.
I've got a friend friend Lee, who he picked up the same kind of habit about 40, 50 days after me. So we were in sync for a while in terms of doing this, and then the streak on the Fit app, Fit with 2 eyes, it broke, and we were both like, no, because we went from Turkey to England, and where it was. But still, the habit's still there. Like, I don't need the app anymore. I know I've still got to use the app to do the stretch, but it's not about that. It's about me knowing myself that I've done that routine.
Yeah.
And I know if I do my stretch, I can go for my run. If I do my run, I can eat as much as I want. And that's my kind of thought process. But yeah, well, that's kind of, and just also on the marathon cycle thing, wanted to ask, why do we pick 12 week, 16 week, 20 week cycles, and what's the difference?
Yeah, that is a really good question, and the reason I say that is because we do fall into that trap of thinking, oh, I've now got to focus on a marathon because I'm 20 weeks out. And we looked at it when we were planning the workshop around, well, what is roughly around 16 to 20 weeks out from, say, the big marathons, and how can we help people in that period of time, because we know that's when their mind switches. I think the biggest point with that is from a mindset perspective. A lot of people can't be focused for too long. So, if you start saying to people, all right, you're going to prepare for this marathon and you're 12 or 13 months out, it can seem like a long time away and people can lose focus. So it's a really good period of time, 4 to 5 months is a really good period of time to say, right, we need you to be focused on this event and we need to train for that event in this period of time. And they're able to keep habits, they're able to keep training, and then they have that rest and recovery to come after the event. But I genuinely believe the best way to train for any event, any marathon, is train consistently over time and build that big aerobic base. And between 12 and 16 weeks out, individual depending, start to become what I call more marathon focused. So you're always training, but then the specificity around your training plan starts to change towards the event that you're training for.
Meaning that you do a longer run at a certain period of time, at a certain pace.
Exactly that. Your longer run maybe becomes the main session of the week, it starts to go up in volume, you maybe add some mixed pace in there. It certainly becomes the priority in the training plan. Whereas if you've been running 5k, 10k's over the summer, which a lot of people do, your long run may have not been the priority in that training plan. It might have been your interval sessions or your hill sessions or your fartleks. So the priority will slightly shift on, well, which training part has the most emphasis now. And as you go towards the marathon, that's certainly the longer run, the longer tempos, because it's the closest thing to the marathon.
Definitely. So on the marathon topic, after you finish a marathon,
yes,
that week afterwards, and I noticed you're hobbling around today. You didn't run a marathon, but you ran up some hills.
I feel like that.
Yeah. But I know I was speaking to Lucy just today on the phone, like, she's done a marathon yesterday, and I said, you're going to feel it tomorrow, and sometimes you feel it, sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
What are the best ways to rest and recover after you've done a marathon like that? What are some of the tactics, and actually, first of all, why should you rest and recover after you've done a marathon? Sometimes you have a choice.
Yeah.
But if you do feel okay, why is it important to take that period of time, 1 day, 2 weeks, 1 month, like Paula Radcliffe, off?
Well, physically, you need to let the body recover because you've damaged the muscles, the tissues. Mentally, you might be damaged, as we've already discussed. A lot of people are. But there's a difference between recovering from training, because when you recover from training, we're looking for what we call training adaptations. So we're looking to damage ourselves, which sounds crazy, but it's true, to then recover, to then adapt to that training stimulus to become stronger.
You mean like damage in terms of your muscle fibers tearing,
Yes,
that sort of stuff?
Exactly that. So we push ourselves to a certain limit to then, that's why rest and recovery is so important. Because if you don't do that, you then push yourself over the limit and you don't recover. But in the marathon, if we go back to what you said at the start, you've got to that peak if you've been aiming for it. So let's take the example 1 that you gave earlier. If you are aiming for that one race, then hopefully, you've put everything in and you're feeling the effects of that. So before you go back into training, you need to make sure the body's recovered. Otherwise, you risk chronic fatigue, you risk picking up injuries because the muscles haven't recovered, and that then has a knock-on effect on training in the long term.
So it's part of the thing before, work on your process, and it has to be part of the process of But how do you adapt if you are doing that particular way of doing things? You are doing stuff on a regular basis. How do you say, today I was meant to do 6 miles, but it's Tuesday, I always do it on Tuesday. How do you say to yourself, no, even though you might feel okay?
It's really tricky because I coach a lot of athletes who have that mindset and have had to convince them that it's better to rest. And over time they've seen the benefits of that. But I also appreciate that it's a big part of people's week, and for a lot of people around mental health, they need running in their life. So I think you've got to also consider the individual. So if we take example 2 where you said the marathon might be a part of a process of a training cycle where they've got multiple marathons, then it might be that they only actually have 2 to 3 days off as opposed to a week. But with that, I think that you've got to be honest with yourself, and if you feel like you've not recovered, then take things easier. I was talking to Jess Judd on the track just last week. She'd ran the night of 10,000 metre PBs and she'd won that. The following weekend she'd ran a 5k and she didn't win that. It was a Diamond League, but she ran very well, ran a PB. And then the following day she ran the Loughborough International 1500 metres. She went down to the track on the Tuesday to do the session. She had 12 by a K off a minute, and she rang her dad and said, I'm not feeling that. She did a warm-up, I'm too tired, we're going to shift it, we're going to have 2 days recovery and come back on the Thursday. You've got to be honest with yourself. Like, quite often when the body is not right, and it's really important to do that. So if you're feeling tired, if you're feeling fatigued, you probably are.
Is it down to you though? Like, I was watching it was on TalkSport actually, and they were talking in football terms, and like Martin Keown and Simon Jordan were discussing the recovery after matches, and they were saying that Martin Keown was saying 64 hours or something like that, which is quite a long time, which probably wouldn't work. But these players, they put football matches and they're running for 90 minutes, and they're doing that 2 to 3 times, twice a week.
Yeah.
Twice a week, every single week for like the majority of the year. How do they get away with it? Because they're meant to be performing at their peak on those days. Is it because it's a team sport, or is it because the nature of short sprints is physiologically easier, like just doing a mile, than doing a marathon?
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing to highlight professional football, professional sport, is they're conditioned to do it because it's a full-time job.
Yeah, fair.
So they spend a lot of money and time on recovery products and investment into that. Their recovery day is probably a Sunday with a family to play on the Saturday. They're back into training on the Monday, and they've got massage, they've got ice baths, they've got all the top, science. But on top of that, they train every single day to condition themselves to be able to do that. The other thing is their competition is slightly different, as you say, there's a team aspect to it. But around the competition days, their training days aren't as intense as so I'm a Leeds United fan. They're quite a good example here. Marcelo Bielsa had a very high intensity training regime, and it was great at first. Everyone was super fit and they were performing really well. But then over that 2-year period, the cracks started to appear. We had more injuries this season than any other team because eventually it does take its toll when you're not recovering.
Some of those recovery methods you mentioned just briefly then, which ones of those are useful to a runner? Like someone who's competing at maybe not the elite level, but someone who's competing more casually. Like you mentioned ice baths, you mentioned what are some of those you can actually do and that are reasonably affordable and that actually have some benefit?
Well, the 2 most effective, I would say, are the most cost effective and the easiest to focus on. The first thing, sleep. It's literally the best recovery tool out there. It is as close to cheating as you can get, and that is scientifically proven. You recover so well when you're sleeping. So sleep is important, and if you can create good sleeping habits, we've spoken in the past about morning routines. Creating good bedtime routines is important. What time do you switch your phone off? What time are you shutting off that blue light? Can you read before bed? Can you let that mind relax? Can you put a face mask on? Do you wear earplugs? That type of thing. Get a really good sleep routine, because the better you sleep, the better you recover. That doesn't cost you anything really. The other thing then is nutrition. So nutrition is individual to everyone, but you literally are what you eat. You know, if you eat a balanced diet and everything in moderation.
Pork pies today.
Pork pies today, two pork pies. I didn't even share
They're
the
always small.
But
Sorry.
salad as well, questionable, pasta salad. But if you balance it and you're eating well and drinking well and keeping hydrated, you generally will recover well. I would say the rest, and you know, just being on a global marathon challenge, and the physio there, Dave, who was brilliant by the way, he spoke a lot about this to the guys. He was like, the rest he believes is literally up here. It's what suits you. Some people prefer massage, some people prefer ice baths, some people like compression, but the science is so mixed on it all, because it is literally what the person prefers. And actually, all the research suggests that the most powerful thing out there is the placebo effect.
Yeah.
If you think it's going to work, it does actually work for you. So, you know, it is a case of finding out what works for you. There's lots of different things out there. My best advice would be trial them, see what you like, and if you like it, you think it's working for you, go for it. But before you go and buy anything fancy and spend a lot of money, take care of your nutrition and your sleep, and you'll be on the right track.
You just mentioned it then, the Global Marathon Challenge. Explain what that is, because like it sounded pretty intense.
Yeah, it was epic. I mean, I got ill on the back of it, which wasn't so epic. But we did a Q&A on it last week with our team, and it was just amazing just to recap and, you know, go through everything that the guys actually went through. The original concept was that Hodgie and Stringer were going to do 5 marathons in 5 days on 5 different continents.
5 marathons,
Yeah.
5 days, 5 different continents.
Yeah. And it's only possible with time travel, of course, if you do it in the right
Yeah,
direction.
yeah.
If
You
you
fly
go,
against the-
if you fly against time.
Yeah.
You literally go back in time,
Yeah.
which they still had to do.
Which country did you go to?
So yeah, the concept changed because of COVID, and it was meant to be done prior to COVID. Training's been going for a long time. In the end, they went for 5 marathons in 5 global cities, and technically still in 5 days. It had to be under 120 hours. So they started in Bangkok and in Thailand, and they started at the Vishai statue, who's the former Leicester City chairman who unfortunately lost his life in a helicopter crash. They started at his statue in Bangkok, did marathon number 1. We then flew via Japan to Hawaii, and Hawaii, although it's an American state, technically, geographically, is a different continent, believe it or not. But they weren't necessarily counting the continents, they were counting the cities. So Honolulu in Hawaii was marathon number 2. We then flew via Seattle to Alaska, we went through direct to Alaska, and then they did marathon in Alaska. We then flew from Alaska to Seattle, and Seattle to New York. Marathon 4 was in New York, and then they flew from New York back home to Leicester. And after you've been to Bangkok, Honolulu, Alaska, Anchorage, and New York, I mean, finishing Leicester.
Leicester. It made sense of what you were doing.
It made sense to then finish at the Vishai statue outside the Leicester City Stadium. So he ran from the Vishai statue in Bangkok, which was really nice because his family were there to meet us, to the Vishai statue in Leicester. They laid a wreath at both statues, and did 5 marathons in 5 days in 5 global cities.
So what's crazy about that, like talk about rest and recovery in that particular topic, is that count as one whole event, or does that count as 5 marathons with rest and recovery in between?
It didn't dawn on me till we did the Q&A the other day, and I was explaining it to people, and I said, so we went to Thailand, we slept in a hotel room in Thailand, they started marathon number 1, but from that point on, from marathon number 1 until they finished the marathon in New York, so 4 marathons later, they never slept in a hotel bed. The only sleep they got was on economy air seat travel.
Wow.
So rest and recovery strategies was so important. The biggest thing was fueling.
Food.
We literally had to just keep them stocked up all the time. We were eating lots on the go. We were eating anything they could get their hands on.
Get massage? Was there massage there?
Yeah, Dave was massaging. Ivan had a little bit of a go at certain points. Hydration was key. Electrolytes.
Use any tools? Any particular like devices?
Yes, rollers. Some of the strings like the Theragun.
Theragun, yeah.
That. There was also compression sleeves.
Rixo stuff?
Yeah, Rixo stuff.
Yeah.
I actually used the Rixo stuff when I was able to join in with the guys. Cold baths, they had an ice bath for
I
them.
love the cold bath.
That was Thailand. Thailand was amazing because we had like a team helping. It was like luxury compared to the other venues. But yeah, it was. You're right. It was all about rest and recovery, really.
Yeah.
And in a weird way, the running, it sounds mad, became the easiest part of it because the rest and recovery was so important, but also the logistics were. Because if you miss a flight or something, it was curtains.
Yeah, you had to do the flight within the run within a certain time to get to the flight. So you couldn't like slowly walking like 10 hours.
No.
You had to do it within like 6-7 hours to get there.
Well, we only had 12 hours from the minute we touched down in Hawaii and Alaska till the flight out of there.
You run from the airport?
We got taxi straight to a hotel, which we weren't going to sleep in, but we had to have in order to keep our bags there. And for to get in through customs, you have to have an address that you're going to. So literally from the airport to the hotel, dropped the bags, the guy started running.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Absolute madness.
But it was brilliant. It was, it's an adventure of a lifetime, isn't it? But it goes back to your point. How long do you need to recover from a marathon?
Yeah.
In this case,
7 hours.
like literally less than half a day.
Crazy. So again, it's all about the challenge you're doing, your motivation behind it, and that side of things more than it is about a set blueprint for everyone.
Exactly, yeah, and they had a big why behind it. They were raising money for charity. They raised over 75,000, I believe, which is incredible. So the Brough Hodges Foundation, which Nick, who was running, he co-founded that charity with his wife. Unfortunately, Nick and Donna lost their child when he was 9 months old. The Brough Hodges Foundation now supports families who've been bereaved of a child. So they help support not just family, not just the parents, but also the siblings as well, because it's it's devastating to families. So one half went to the Brough Hodges Foundation, the other half went to the Vishai Foundation, which is used to be called the Foxes Foundation at Leicester City. And what the Vishai Foundation do is they help a number of local charities here in Leicestershire. So they had a big why behind it, and I think that massively helps with any challenge, and that kept them going. But like you said, that determined, well, it wasn't a case of, they're not aiming to run every marathon as quick as they could. So actually we came up with a walk-run strategy. They pretty much, on average, ran 10 minutes, walked a minute in every marathon they did on average. That was the kind of strategy.
Sure, you can get around it if you want to.
So,
if your why's big enough, you're going to pull yourself through it.
They were still averaging, pretty much 6-hour marathons every single day in extreme temperatures and climates. Like, you can get around if there's a big why behind it. 100%.
Right, I think that wraps it up nicely. So next time we're going to be chatting to, is it Kirsty we're chatting to?
We are, Kirsty, and we're going to do a little bit on marathons again, but we're going to title the episode Mum to Marathon because amazingly Kirsty gave birth to my beautiful niece Mila, and then coached herself to Manchester Marathon, not this year, the year before, and ran a very impressive 3:30. And we think it's just an inspirational story that a lot of mums out there, a lot of families out there can relate to. So we're going to touch on that. But before we go, Matt isn't going to be doing that episode because Matt is getting married in 2 weeks' time and he will be on his honeymoon. So sorry, ladies, this man is off the market. Now,
I've still got 2 weeks left.
Yeah, still got 2 weeks left. Yeah. We could do a live
Don't
auction.
watch this, Lucy.
Live auction to charity to auction him off. But Matt's mum will be happy to know she'll be there with a hat on. She's got a hat.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So she'll be there with a hat on. But Matt won't be on the next episode because he'll be on his honeymoon. So yes, best of luck to him and Lucy. I'll be there in master ceremony, spoiling their day.
Spoiling the day. Right.
Hopefully making it.
Thanks guys, we'll see you next time.